Okay, hello there. We are back for more. Today is the 22nd of July, and we are moving forward on our scene here. So we've still got some more frames to paint. Going to add a drawing after here at the top here, and we'll start our inking here. So let's see. Let's see here. Let's move in closer. Let's go up 200%. And get our little guy here. Okay. Brush. So we're looking for our ink line on the skin. That'll be the orange color here. Make sure we're set to the solid ink color, or the solid color, not the sketchy line, but the solid line. That's what we're going to ink with. Remember that as you ink, or clean up rather in color, you're seeking to make a line without stopping if you can. You want your line to be continuous so that there's a consistency to it, if possible. If you find that you've got a slight shake in your hand, don't let that bother you too much. It happens. It's barely noticeable. On a clean line, it's a lot less noticeable on a clean line, I think, than it is even on a sketchy line. It's like with a sketchy line, I think you can have more. If you have more mistakes in the line, there's a forgiveness to it because the eye sort of understands that it's looking at a sketchy line. A cleaner line, on the other hand, does seem to jump a little bit more if you've created a sort of consistency that you want to keep throughout. But even with that clean line, you still a lot of times are going to find that you're not going to see it. You might think you'd see it really well, but in reality, you probably won't. You probably won't notice it. So that's not to say that you just get sloppy and you don't care about your line, how you're making it. Doesn't mean that. It just means that you probably are going to be fine if you make a little flub somewhere here or there. That's not going to, you don't need to worry too much about it. But you're trying to make the line as tidy as you can make it. So as you make that line, you're trying to make it with a sweep so that it's consistent from the beginning of the point that your pen touches the paper all the way through to when you're done. Let's see, here's the brush. Okay. This line is on the top. Since the whole brush is going to be that one color, there's no point in drawing the bottom part of it because it's going to get filled in. Okay, now here's an interesting thing. The color of the paint. Let's see, let's work that underneath. The color of the paint, when it's separated from the strokes on the letter, should still just be one continuous blue color. However, you'll notice that when I have it, say, over the area where the paint is, all inside of here, you'll notice that I had a light blue line in there. That was to designate the edge of the brush itself as it's painting within that area. So, but once the brush comes outside of that paint area, then there isn't really any need to put a light blue line on it because it is painting the color. It was painting the color of this line, so there's no need to separate it. The only reason why I was even bothering to separate it was because I wanted to show the edge of the brush, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Yeah, talking it might not make any sense, but okay. So you see here how the light blue line is in here. That's only to delineate the edge of the brush. Once it comes clear, you see of that now, there's no need to put a light blue line on that. The only reason why that was done was to delineate the edge of the brush when it's amidst the painted area. So I think that clarifies that. All right, let's see. So it's going to go in front. Oops. I always forget to go back to the wavy line. Let's see. There. Go backwards to our, yeah, there we go. All right, so that's the line we want. I think you all are understanding what I mean by how when you're trying to make a continuous line, how it can be difficult because you can't, your hand is going to be in the way. See, as I'm drawing here, for instance, my hand is, well, I can see this line, but sometimes my hand is in the way of in the direction of the line that I'm trying to draw. So, I'm pulling it back, but I can't see where I'm going because my hand is actually covering it. So that's always a little frustrating sometimes, but you know, you can eventually get it, but it can be a little frustrating, yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I think we're right there. Let's see. Okay. All right, so let's go to the paint bucket, skin color, hand, hair, brush. What colors the brushes? Oh, it's the lighter blur on, so it's this one. Paint, shirt, shirt. Okay, and then we check. Yeah. Yeah, those frickin' stripes, boy, I tell you. Frickin' stripes. Well, anyways. We'll just take our chances. Let's see. I'll play. And even in the hair, you may see, like I say, you will see more mistakes in your work than anybody else will probably see because you're closer to it. And after, yeah, it's it's kind of inevitable. I don't know that it's easy to, yeah. Okay, let's see. Make this a little bigger. Okay, same thing. When I'm doing, also, here's another thing. Now, the only time that I can say listen to music or have some kind of background noise is when I'm doing this kind of work because now I don't have to really think too much. I can just turn on music or whatever and just you know listen and clean up. This is when you can listen to an audio book or, you know, or the Bible or something, if that's what you like to do, or music or a podcast. Yeah, this, because you're not thinking about, you're not having to think about what you're doing because it's a very repetitive job and you're just really, you are just doing tracing. So technically it's not, doesn't mean you're not thinking at all. It just means that, you know, it's easier to do something on the side, to listen to something while you're doing this. And sometimes that can be helpful because this kind of work can sometimes feel a little monotonous. It isn't, but it can feel that way. I do love the cleanup line more. Yeah, I really do. I like cleaning stuff up. Kind of addicted to that. That was what I did at Disney. It's probably why they never let me animate that much. I think I was pretty. I guess I was a pretty good cleanup artist. I guess I was. That was the job that I seemed to have the most. Um, but they did let me animate it a little bit. I did. I animated. And it was also nice because I got to really learn a lot from a lot of other people. And, you know, you pick things up when you work underneath different artists. You pick, well, when you work with, you know, underneath, with different artists, you pick up things they do. You see how they think, and you see the methods that they work, how they work. When I was working with Glenn Keane, I was really just amazed at how he would approach a scene. Just remarkable. The guy was brilliant, or is brilliant, rather. Was, I'm talking about it like he's not around. He's still around. Thank God he's still around. Tremendous talent. Uh, there's some animators that I can't even imagine having to work with because their work is so finalized. You know, it's like so the ones you learn the most from, I think, are the ones who work in a fairly rough stage. And my wife used to tell me that she said, well, you know, your work, you do your work so clean that you don't leave anything for the assistant to do. And I, you know, I realized, you know, that she was right about that. I never really thought about it that way, but she was right. And it occurred to me that it's like, you know, maybe I would not have learned what I learned had I worked with an animator who was worked as clean as I did. But I did work with some animators who did work in a fairly, I'd say, finished way. That didn't bother me. Um, you know, so I don't know. But you do learn different things from people. And everybody, no, but one thing I notice is that no two people seem to have the exact same way of doing something or seeing something. And that's what I loved about it. It was that it was so, animation could be such a unique experience that each person could bring something to it that was completely different and unique. So, you know, that's cool, I think. Of course, one of the things that I didn't know until I started to work there was that some assistants were like career assistants. And sometimes they actually only worked with certain artists. There was one guy who worked. I remember when I was working on the Fox and the Hound, and I believe it was. I want to say it was. That was I was think it was Cliff Norberg. Cliff Norberg was tremendous, another great animator. There were a lot of guys who were what do you call them? They would have like A string animators, B string animators, and the A string obviously tells you that they were the better of the group. Though I don't know how you qualify that because I would look at their work and I couldn't tell the difference. It's like you get people that were sea level or whatever, and they were good too. So I don't know what they even mean by that sometimes. But anyhow, Cliff Norberg, and there was this other fellow named Lee something, Leroy Cross, I think it was. I forget. Maybe I'm getting his name wrong. Lisa Leroy, if you're still around. Sorry if I'm getting your name incorrect, but he was like a career assistant or in between or a cleanup guy or something. In the sense that that's all he did. He only worked with that one guy like his whole career at Disney or most of his career. And I thought, wow, that's intense. But in some ways, I could kind of see why that was the case because what happens is it means that the animator can get to a point where he doesn't have to communicate much to his assistant because the assistant knows his work so well that he doesn't have to explain himself, you know, which I guess has a lot of advantages. So anyway, yeah. So I mean that I don't know. I guess that's a good thing. I guess that could be a good thing. I suppose. I don't know. I would think it would get a little boring though after a while. It's like if you're only if you're only working with one person for 20, 30, 40 years, wouldn't that? I would think that might get a little monotonous. I would think. I don't know. Maybe not. I was fortunate enough to have Chuck Harvey as my animator guy for not a, well. He was the guy I worked with toward the end of my stint in feature animation. So I was his assistant, and I did his in betweens and breakdowns and all that stuff. And Chuck worked kind of rough, but Chuck had trained under Milt Call. And that was really cool. So Chuck, I really learned a lot from him because he and I had very similar personalities. I noticed that's another thing at Disney is that they would pair you with people that were like you in some ways, I guess, which makes sense, because if you're going to be working with somebody for a long time, it makes sense to that you should be there should be a camaraderie, I guess. Yeah, sure, why not? So let's see. Brush and ink. Um, Incident today. If anybody is interested in, if you need help, for instance, like let's say you're making a film, an animated film of your own, and you would like some help, when I say help, advice or some, help when you're making your film in the sense of doing like let's say you're working on your film and you want to contact me and you want to have me help you with something with your film, whatever that might be, storyboarding, character design, whatever. Um, just advice or whatever. Okay. And the reason that I mention this is I have a student that I'm working with right now who I'm doing that with. She's taken my animation course but she's also made her own films. And right now she's doing that with me where she comes in and she actually has me help her with her storyboard and all that. I mean, she does the storyboard, but she will run things by me and then we will talk and I will give her suggestions and all that kind of stuff. So that's something that I do. So if you're interested in that, um, contact me. Um, my contact is. I'll put that on my in the description. I've done that before, but if you're just kind of coming in on this now, and this is the first time you watched one of my videos, this is something I do. I also teach classes, animation classes. I teach classes in character design. I teach classes in storyboarding. I highly recommend all artists to do their own animation films. Just a smart idea, mainly because um, it is so easy now for anybody and everybody to make their own films. It's kind of a shame if you don't take advantage of this opportunity because um, since anybody and everybody can make their own films, why not? It just seems like to me it would be a tremendous waste if you got any kind of idea that you think is any good. Then why not make it? Why not go ahead and your ideas are just as good as anyone else's. So yeah, get out there and make your own film and have some fun because it's I think it's just a good idea. You know, share with the world how you feel about entertainment, what you find entertaining, what do you find compelling, what types of stories do you want to see? Tell those stories because hey, nobody has a monopoly on stories, and you know we all are affected by stories. So, you know. And today, if I may say, since we all put our 2 cents in on these social media platforms that we're on, so I'll put mine in for anybody who cares to hear it. Um, it seems to me that today the need for good entertainment actually seems like it's a lot more of a need today, in my opinion, than it ever has been, and I think that's primarily because what we're seeing being produced by Hollywood is a little bit too much of the same stuff over and over. It's like, as a director producer, I've noticed since I've been retired that the quality of stories being told has dropped significantly, and I understand that companies tend to do projects that kind of are based on things that are already pre-sold. They've been doing that type of thing for years now. But people like to see something new. And not only that, not only do they want to see something new, they want to see something good. And they don't want to see something that's always going to be a reboot of something too. This is another thing that Hollywood is really bad about is rebooting everything. Now, if you've already seen a movie, why would we want to see the same movie again? And another bad mistake is ruining movies that were good, you know. But this is what happens when you have people who are not the creative ones making creative decisions. This is what they're going to do. They're not creative. They'd like to be creative, but they're not. They're running companies and all of that, and that's fine and dandy, but that doesn't make them creators. It'd be like uh, a wealthy person buying a hospital and saying, "Give me the scalpel, I'm going to operate." It's like, no, I don't think so. There's a reason why that guy went to medical school for 12 years. You're not a doctor, so don't act like one. Anyway, I just think that artists, the only reason why we've been in the position we've been in is because we haven't had the ability to do what we want because we haven't had the money. You know, the folks who are wealthy enough to make this stuff are not creative, but they're not supposed to be creative. They're supposed to be the ones to finance the stuff. I gotta watch those freaking stripes are boiling. I'm gonna have to figure that out. So anyway, well, I put in my 2 cents on that, and that's some will agree, some will disagree. But I do. But now I'm just. I think the main thing I'd want to get across here is that we're finally in a position where we can actually contribute something because we can actually make something and make it all the way through. Make the whole thing. Just the little bits of animation that I've been doing over the years for myself. Uh, Normally under the old standard of making things would have literally taken years. One of the very first animated films I did back in the day when everything was being done on paper was a 7-minute film that took me over 4 years to make. That very same film, I made a film just recently that was 8 minutes, so a minute longer than that. It only took me about 3 months. All because this particular software, the ability to draw, paint, animate, is now available. So that's why I'm saying that. In other words, and I think a handful of artists could make a feature film. You could have, I don't know, 4 or 5 people, and within a couple of years, you might have a completely fully animated film. So that's what, and not just fully animated, but all done, color and everything. So I don't know. So, anyways, just something to think about. All right. Well, look, I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. And don't forget, once again, thank God for your talents and gifts. Those of you who have that, you know who I'm talking about. Thank the Lord. All right, we'll see you later, and keep drawing.